everyone, on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. Today we're going to be having the company of Dan Blanchard. Dan is a speaker, writer, award-winning author, and educator. He's going to be having a very interesting conversation with Nancy Butler. Nancy, as a delegate to the United Nations for the Commission on the Status of Women for 2018, 2019, and 2020. But before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness in the planet. We are an international nonprofit organization, and you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment on this video, liking this video, or you can also share the content that we're about to see with someone that you know that can benefit of it. Having said that, we're just gonna have the pleasure of saying welcome to Mindalia, Dan and Nancy. The screen is yours.
Thank you, man. It's so wonderful to see you again and to be back with the Mindalia TV audience. It's such a great audience. And I think they're really going to love our guest tonight, Nancy Butler. She's an amazing woman. She's her third year in a row as a delegate as the United Nations, the Commission on the Status of Women. Now, you just said, Mira, she's basically a woman who's like meeting challenges and creating solutions. That's awesome stuff. She's a professional speaker, member of the National Speakers Association. It's like very cool. Award-winning author for Above All Else book series. She's a business consultant. Seems like she's doing it all. I'm saying she's a business consultant for Butler Communications. The Above All Else success in life and business. And check this one out. I mean, back a while ago, on her own, with no help at all, right? She built up a $200 million in assets business and then sold that business so she could go on to bigger and better things. Everybody, Mindalia TV audience, everybody welcome Nancy Butler. Nancy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that introduction. That was good.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, and you're deserving of that and much, much more, because I know, Nancy, that I just kind of scraped the top of the iceberg telling people who you are. And I can't wait for our conversation tonight for you to share with our audience, more about yourself, what you do, and some of the advice that you got to help them, live a better life. So again, I just kind of scraped the tip of the iceberg. Can you share a little bit more with our Mindalia audience, basically who you are and what you're about, Nancy?
Sure. My background's a little bit unique. I was in the middle of a divorce. I took my kids. I moved 70 miles. I had no alimony, no child support, no other source of income. I had $2,000 to my name, and believe it or not, decided to start my own business in an area that I knew nothing about.
That's scary.
It's very scary, especially when you have no other income and two kids to support, two young children to support. The main reason I did that was, first of all, this is going to sound crazy, but you'll understand it in a minute. I had never heard of a mutual fund. I never owned a stock. I knew nothing about investing. And I decided to start my own asset management and financial planning practice. And the main reason I decided to start it is I figured even if the business didn't work out, what I would learn would help me to raise my children, since their father was not going to be supporting them in any way.
Yeah.
And I needed to get financial education behind me, regardless of what business I was in. And once I got into it, I mean, I absolutely loved it. And what was funny, or I say funny now, it wasn't funny back then at all.
I bet it wasn't.
Yeah, I was actually offered a salaried position before I did this at a higher salary than I'd ever had in my life. And I turned it down to do this business on my own. And my mother and everyone else said, "Who the heck do you think you are? You're being selfish. You have children to support. You need a steady income.
Yeah.
And how can you do this? You're being selfish." And I said, "I'm too young." They were hiring me at the top of the ladder. There was no place to go after that. And I said, "I'm too young to stagnate myself for the rest of my life. And if I do this, there is no ceiling. The sky's the limit, and I can keep growing. Yes, it's going to be very difficult." And I had to pass 3 federal and 8 state exams while I was still living in the house, going through the divorce.
Oh,
then
wow.
move 70 miles, then with $2,000, get my business cards, get my letterhead,
Yep.
get an office, figure out how
Wow.
I was going to put food on the table.
Yep. Yep.
And as you may or may not know, in the financial services industry, from the first time you see a client till you actually get a paycheck can be like 2 to 3 months.
Hmm.
So,
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar, Nancy. I'm familiar a little bit with the financial services business. I tried a little bit of it back a while ago as a side gig from what I do as an educator. Before I was like an author and speaker, so I'm familiar with it. And I know it's hard as heck, to get clients and make money. That's not easy. And it takes time and the certifications and licenses you got to get, the studying you got to do. It's crazy, and then there's no promises. You may get nothing. So I take off my hat to you. You are courageous. You are a brave, brave woman. And we could probably do a whole show on tapping into your bravery. You know what I'm saying? The other thing
what
I
was
loved about it.
interesting, what was interesting too is I did that back in 1981. So it's been 38 years. But when I started, there was no computers. There were no computers. There was no
Yep.
internet. There was no 800 numbers. There was nothing. So
Oh,
I was doing everything with a typewriter and a TI calculator, calculating all the financial plans, writing them all myself. I mean, it
yep.
was absolutely unbelievable. When
And a
I
lot of face
see
to face, right?
all face to face, and when I see the evolution of this industry and what it is today, it is night and day above anything that it was before.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I stayed with it for so long because I saw the difference I made for so
Hmm.
many wonderful people,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
absolutely loved it.
You know what I love, Nancy, is that when you talked about you had kids and you had to kind of like do this for them, you had to learn. If this didn't work out, you would learn a lot that would help you and your family. I love that whole adventure sort of thing that, I know this is going to be an adventure. I know this is a risk, but I'm going to learn something here. It's going to somehow make everything better. Even if I have to go down a different road, do plan B, whatever, I'm going to have this knowledge in my back pocket. Somehow I'm going to be a higher quality person. I'm going to have more skills and I'm going to just somehow be able to use this to make my life better, my kids' life better. I'm loving it. You said that. I know I've gone down that road a few times myself. Your story reminds me a little teeny bit of Susie Orman's story. Listening to you, and I'm thinking I read a book back a while ago. It's a little, fuzzy, all the details, but it seems to me she had sort of like a similar story to you. I think a little bit.
Yeah, that I'm not quite sure about,
Yeah.
but I did end up being able to build the business to 200 million in assets under management before I sold it 12 years ago. And then after
Mhm.
selling it, for the last 12 years, I'm a national speaker. I've written 3 books and I coach businesses all over the country, mainly
Amazing.
financial planning practices, but all kinds of businesses. And so
Yep.
it's been really interesting. I knew I didn't want to die with the knowledge I had built. I wanted a way to pass it on, and being a
Yeah.
national speaker has allowed me
Mhm.
to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with you. Myself being a speaker and author like you, it's a great way to widen your circles and help widen what you can help. You know what I'm saying? It's great stuff. But something you said earlier just really caught my attention. You talked about like they were going to hire you at the top of the scale. Most people would have jumped at that, said, "Oh my gosh, that's a paycheck." Especially if mom is pressuring you, friends and family are pressuring you. How do you turn that down? But you did because you had like this long-term vision. And knowing you, Nancy, and having read some of your stuff and listened to some of your stuff, I know that you talk about this long-term vision and how like this living day to day, wasn't going to do it for you and your family. That's like a stressful living. You know what I'm saying? And you couldn't be your best possible mom to your kids and the best possible person you can be when you have that stress hanging over your head of that day-to-day living. You knew you had to do more. And you just had like that long-term vision. And I'm just wondering, like, how did you get that? I mean, that just sounds so key that you had that long-term vision that you weren't gonna live that kind of stressful life. You deserve more, your kids deserve more, and you weren't gonna settle for that paycheck that might be good now, but not good next year or the year after. I mean, how do you do that?
Again, because I knew that the position I was offered was the ceiling, there was no place to go. I mean, I was 31 years old at the time. And I knew that that just wasn't going to do it for me. Not only that, I have 2 daughters that I was raising. I needed them to see what a woman could do. And if I wasn't successful,
Hmm.
how would I be showing them that they could be successful in whatever venture they chose? I mean, it didn't have to be my venture, which they didn't do, which is
Yeah.
fine, but
Hmm.
it's more about showing them that as long as you stand strong and you have confidence in yourself, and you're not always looking at tomorrow, but instead you're thinking about 3 months, 6 months, 5 years, 10 years down the road. And at early as 20 years old, you start thinking that way, odds are you'll be a whole lot more successful.
I so agree with you. And what you just said made me think of something. My brother-in-law just became one of the youngest judges in the state of New York. And me and my wife were talking about how impressive that was. And my wife was like, well, of course he was going to become a judge because his father was a judge. You know what I'm saying? So, and if he wasn't going to become a judge, it was going to be something big. You know what I'm saying? Because his father had a pretty big, important job. And I think that, you saying the same sort of thing. Your daughters need to look up at you and say, all right, my mom, faced her fears, overcame obstacles, created solutions, met challenges. My mom did these things, so I need to do these things too. And I got to tell you, Nancy, there are times when I'm going through life, and you could probably relate to this. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. Is like, I'm wondering like where my life's going, what's next. Sometimes I'm thinking, I don't know. Maybe I should take it easy for a little while. I deserve a break, But then I think, if I don't climb that ladder, what are my kids going to do? What chance are my kids going to have in life if they don't see their father excelling? If they don't see their
Right,
mother excelling?
right,
What
right.
chance are they going to have? We
Yeah.
lay that road, that example.
And I had some other challenges as well. Believe it or not, I didn't graduate high school,
Really?
really. So
Best-selling
after
author, didn't graduate high school, huh?
Yeah, so afterwards, I put myself through school, got my diploma, and then put myself through college while I was raising my kids, while I was building my business, because
Amazing.
I knew that I had to get that done before it was time to get them through school. Uh, and I did remarry, and we had to plan that out because that costs a fortune
Yep.
around me going to school, around putting my kids through school.
Hmm.
We actually dated for 10 years because we waited till I filled out the last financial aid form on my youngest child. And then a couple of months later, we got married
So
because
there's that long-term planning again.
yeah, they were going to count his income against my children getting financial aid, even
Uh,
though they weren't going to count their father's income against them getting financial aid. So we
yep.
waited till I filled out the last FAFSA form, and then we got married.
Yeah. So
So
if I
it's
can
planning, it's
backtrack,
good.
so if I can backtrack a little bit, I know it all ended, you know, ended on a good note and all that. You got married, got a beautiful family. You're successful. Your kids are growing up, under that example and becoming successful themselves. Everything just seems wonderful, but it wasn't always wonderful for you. I'm
But
sure you didn't sleep much at nights. I'm sure you were running around like crazy, like,
long hours, little sleep.
yeah,
Fortunately, I'm one that doesn't need a lot of sleep. I go to bed around 1 in the morning and I get up around 4 or 5 when I was working, running the practice.
yep,
Um, but that's
I know.
just me. And then one year I was very ill. I was in and out of the hospital several times. I had major surgery.
Oh,
And when you're self employed, if you don't see your clients, you have no income. So who's going to keep my clients while I'm in the hospital? Who's going to manage my children while I'm in the hospital? Uh,
hmm.
it was really, really, really tough. But you do what you got to do.
You're a very courageous woman.
Yeah.
And going back even farther, like you took something that was negative, in your life, that whole you and your husband didn't work out, you got that divorce. He didn't really help you out. You were on your own, doing your own thing. But some people would be bitter, but you got better. And you turned that whole experience of being like divorced and you turned it into something really, really positive by becoming like a certified divorce financial
Right.
analyst.
Right.
I mean, that's like really cool. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So I later, during my financial advisory practice time, I became one of the few certified divorce financial analysts in the state. And I have testified in court as an expert witness on what's financially fair in divorce cases. So either attorneys hire me or the clients hire me because I have software that here's the whole story.
Yep.
Attorneys know the legal parts of divorce, but they don't know financial planning. They don't
Mhm.
know about the assets. They don't know about tax planning. So it
Mhm.
might look like this family, this husband and wife, have a 50-50 split today. But with my software, it shows if they actually take the assets they're talking about, with the way they're going to be taxed, with the penalties that they're going to have when the money comes out, how will they end up 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road? And often, I mean, often, most of the time, one will end up having nothing after 20 years, and the
Uh,
other one will be a millionaire. And it looked like they were 50-50 right in the beginning. But I mean, here's some of the reasons for that. Let's say he gets the house and she gets the 401k. When he sells the house, there's no tax on it. He
mhm.
just gets to keep the cash and go on his merry way. But
Yeah.
she gets the money out of the 401k. And if she hasn't had the income during those years that she needs, she's going to probably lose 40% or more as she takes money out of that account between taxes, penalties, and everything else. That's going to run out real quick, and his may keep growing and growing. Or
Yeah.
split it the other way. If she got the house, he got the IRA. So that's just one example. But becoming a certified divorce financial analyst helped me help others make sure that everything was run fairly.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, what a great story that is, and the way you can help people out. And like when people just look on the surface, they don't see certain things when they're just
Right.
looking at the surface thing. And like you said, I mean, 5 years goes by, 10 years go by, and it's bad now. And that could have been avoided if people knew. And I'm just so happy that you're there to help people
So now
like that.
I also write the material and teach continuing education classes to divorce attorneys for them to keep their licenses. And I teach
Yeah.
them the financial aspects of divorce to help them with the things they don't know that they need to look at to help their clients.
Nancy, you seem to do it all. I don't know. I don't know how you had time to like write the books and everything else that you do because you're doing so many things. But let's go down that road for a minute. I mean, earlier you talked about being a speaker, being an author, gave you like wider circles of influence and ability to help more people. But I mean, writing a book is kind of a big deal to become like an author. I mean, that's 2 years to write a book. A lot of people say. I know my first book I wrote took me like a good 2 years. That's a big, big commitment. No promises of anything at the end.
Right.
How did you go about that? What was there? Was there something that just
That's
put
kind of
you over the
funny.
hump to say write that book?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I never considered myself an author. I had no desire to write a book. I know nothing about writing books. But
Yep.
when people, including family, heard about my background, I had so many people saying, "You need to write a book. You need to write a book. People need to hear about that." And I got so sick and tired of hearing them that I finally wrote the book just to get them off my back. So I
Yeah.
wrote the book. I was writing it a little at a time, a little at a time. Like you say, it takes a couple of years. And then I just got sick of looking at it. So I
Yeah.
finally asked the publisher, and it was like beginning of October, how many pages or how many words does this have to be a book? And he said 50,000 words. I had about 10 at the point, and I said, "That's it. I've had enough. You're going to have this book by January." And by January, I had 60 something thousand words and the book was
Wow.
finished
You
because
didn't
I
sleep
just
much
get,
that time.
when I put my mind to something, it's going to happen. I don't care what the heck's going to get in the way, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the second book was easy because I'm a national speaker. I had PowerPoints. The second book I wrote was for
Yep.
realtors because I had coached a lot of realtors. I had written a business plan for realtors and I'd
Hmm.
spoken at their conferences. So I just took all the PowerPoints information that I used when I spoke at their conferences. I took
Yep.
the business plan and I just put it in a book. It took me like 2 weeks to write the book and the book was done. Um,
Wow.
for
Yeah.
the
Cool.
yeah, and for the last several years, and when I had my practice, At the time I sold the practice, I had about 1,200 clients, and over half of them were over the age of 65. I had been
Hmm.
in business 25 years, so I saw people through the aging process, through needing long-term care, through death, through helping their families settle their estates.
Yep.
And so I speak on that a lot now. And people were saying, I can't write fast enough with all the tips you're giving us. You have a
Yep.
book. So I finally
Yep.
said, gee, maybe I've got to write a third book.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
finally went out and wrote the third book, and that one's been doing really, it's already won major awards and it's been
Oh, yeah.
really well.
That's awesome. It's
Yeah.
funny. If you have a similar story, like my students kept telling me, you got to write a book, you got to write a book. And that just went on for years. Then finally I was just like, all right, I'll write a book. You know what I'm saying?
Sounds like me.
For me, I thought it might just be like an intellectual exercise and that would be it. I mean, I didn't want to write a book, you know what I'm saying? But I just gave in, wrote the book, figured intellectual exercise. If it helps just one person, I've done good. And then next thing I know, it got published and a whole bunch of other books followed. So I agree with you. It gets a little easier after, you know,
Right.
you get over that hump of writing that first book. But as you're going through that, you're telling me how, you know, I know you're a financial analyst, you do things with the, divorcees and attorneys and all that. And then you do stuff on real estate too. You branch out on that. That's a whole nother certification. How did you get into the real estate stuff?
Where that started was when I was married the first time, my husband and I were managing apartment complexes all over the state. I was running about 1,000 apartments all over the state of Connecticut at the time of the divorce. So
Wow.
when we got when we decided to get divorced, I decided I didn't want to be in that industry anymore. And that's when I moved 70 miles and started my asset management and financial planning practice. So when it came time to start coaching people,
Uh-huh.
real estate was like a match. I mean, it was very easy for me. And what I actually did was I interviewed realtors all across the country for about 6 months to get all the information, the current information I needed, because when I was in it, it was a long time ago and things change. And I
Yep.
interviewed them on what were their biggest issues, what are their biggest problems, and what do they see as the difference from when they started to today. And then it's easy for me to figure out how to solve those problems. And I just
Yep.
took the book and put in how to solve those issues. So that's how that came about.
Wow. It seems to me there's almost like no challenges you're not meeting, and no solution you're not
I don't know
creating.
about none. I'm sure I could find something.
I mean, you're so widespread and so multi-talented, and you're helping so many different people. But I do have a quick real estate question for you, Nancy.
Okay.
Uh, with Amazon and like Zillow, I think I heard they were teaming
Yeah.
up to do like a lot of digital house showings.
Right.
That's gonna make it tougher for real estate agents going forward, isn't it?
Down the road, it's going to be tougher than it is today. And today it's a little bit tougher, but right now they have a great opportunity. There are more people over the age of 65 in the United States than there ever was in history. And for the
Yep.
next about 20 years, every day, 10,000 people turn 65 years old. And the reason I
Yep.
say that, a lot of the older people are not into the technology like the younger people are,
Hmm.
and they really appreciate having someone hold their hand, help them through face to face, sit down, bring them cookies, and just make the process easier for them. So, what I talk to a lot of them about is there are so many realtors out there today. How do you make yourself the realtor of choice? What
Hmm.
makes you stand out from all the others that are out there, and why should they select you? And so that's a lot of what's in the book as well, as ways to make yourself stand out and have the technology not be as big of an issue. People don't mind paying for pretty much anything, including a realtor, as long as there's value for what they're paying.
That makes
If there's
sense.
if there's absence of value, they will not pay it. But if they
Yep.
see a value in the price they're paying, then they don't mind.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
realtors in person with people, showing them personally and pointing things out and making a connection face to face, especially for the older crowd today,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
still really important.
Cool. I mean, you know business inside and out. That's
Oh
no
yeah,
doubt about it. You know so many different ways to help people, and you create value yourself in so many different ways.
I try.
So, and you've been going through this now for a while, as you had said. So, what is it like today? Is the women's struggle? I mean, you do so many things with the UN, with businesses, and is the women's struggle in business today? Is it still just as difficult as it was when you started? Have things gotten better? What kind of advice do you have for women who may be struggling with some of the similar things you went through, trying to figure out how to do it on their own?
I think it depends what industry you're in, but for the
Hmm.
most part, I think it's a lot better for women today in the United States anyway. When I'm
Yep.
at the UN, I am with about 10,000 women from all over the world. And I have
Cool.
an app on my phone so I can converse with them, even though they may not speak English.
Oh,
So I
cool.
talk with a lot of them. And when I learn their challenges, it's very different than our challenges. In the US, we're
Mhm.
extremely fortunate. And
Yep.
I would say the dichotomy between what a woman's challenges are and a man's challenges are getting closer and closer to being the same. It's not exactly the same today, but it's a heck of a lot better than when I started. When I started, after 1 year, the top advisors get sent to a conference. There were 2,000 people at this conference. There were 20 women.
Oh,
The rest
yeah.
were men. And if
Hmm.
you have that same conference today, it's not 50-50, but it's a heck of a lot closer than it ever was years ago. And there's a lot
Yep.
more women in the financial services industry than there ever was before. So it
Yep.
depends on what industry you're in, and it depends on your self confidence. I mean, you can tell
Mm.
just by the way I speak. I don't care what you think about me being female or male. If
Love
you
it.
don't want my help, then go find somebody else. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you, I will not take anyone on unless I'm positive that I can make them better off after working with me than not. Because if I don't do that, then they're worse off. Because not
Yep.
only have they not improved, they don't have the money they paid me either, so they're worse
Hmm.
off. So
Yeah.
I won't let that happen. That's just not in my DNA. I can't let that happen.
Yeah. So does the confidence just come natural to you? I mean, what about the people out there that it doesn't come natural to? How do
You
we
know
help
how
them
it all
with that?
started? I've got to give it to my kids. And you'd see this in my first book because I had already decided my ex husband was going to take the kids. And I had already decided if that happened, I wouldn't be here anymore. And I
Yep.
knew how I was going to do it. I mean, I'm a planner. I had it all planned out. I knew when, how, and I would make sure I wouldn't tell anyone because I always heard if you tell somebody, it means you don't really want it to happen. You want to be saved. I didn't want to be saved. If I didn't get my kids, I would not be here. And then at the last
Hmm.
minute, I got my kids. And I thought, I just took them 70 miles away from their father. I can't let them lose their mother too. That would be selfish of me. I
Yeah.
care
Yeah.
too much about them to allow that to happen. So if I
Yep.
didn't get the kids, I probably wouldn't be here. But because I
Well,
got my kids, I had to do well. I had no
yep.
choice.
Yeah. You had to step up.
Yeah,
No choice. You had to at least fake it. If you were
right,
scared or nervous,
right.
you had to at least fake it till you make it, right?
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And I guess that's maybe advice that we could share with all of our Mendalia
I don't
people
know
out there
about
that
fake it
struggle.
till you, well, fake it till you make it as far as my own self confidence. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I
Mhm.
was so unconfident to the point that he was very controlling when we were married. And
Mhm.
after the marriage, I realized I didn't know what I liked to wear. I didn't know what I liked to eat. I didn't
Yeah.
know how I wanted to wear my hair. He didn't allow me to wear makeup, so I didn't wear makeup. So I thought, gee, maybe I
Yep.
should wear makeup. It took me
Yeah.
a year after buying clothes, wearing them once, and saying, I hate this. He used to like this,
Yeah.
and changing my hairstyle and changing and putting makeup on. It took me about a year to figure out who I was. And once
Mhm.
I figured out who I was and my business started taking off, then the confidence really kicked in.
Amazing how far you've climbed. I encourage all the Mendalia females out there that are struggling with anything at all to reach out to Nancy. Absolutely. So Nancy, something else that I was that I know about you just from reading about you and knowing you and watching some of your stuff is, you talk about this whole thing like you can't control yesterday's newspaper.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I kind of like thought right away about the old rocking chair test that I think about, when you're 90 years old and you're rocking on your front porch, you're going to regret like more of the things you didn't do versus what you did do. So
Right.
don't worry about yesterday's newspaper. Think about what you're going to be doing next because you don't want to regret saying, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that, but I didn't. Maybe I didn't have the confidence. I should have had the confidence. Should have just did it. But you're going to be, sitting there rocking on your chair one day, and hopefully you've done, all of our Mindalia fans out there have done the things that they've wanted to do with their life. What would you suggest? What kind of principles would you send their way?
It's not even just about business. If you go to my Pinterest page, you will see some of the crazy stuff I've done. I mean, I went on an African safari. In the middle of the safari, they told me I could get out. The cheetah just ate. I got out of the Jeep. I laid down, and there's a picture of me petting a live, full-grown cheetah in South Africa. I went with my daughter on her 40th birthday as my gift to her. And before we left, she said, Mom, there's something on my bucket list that you can only do in South Africa. Would you do it with me? And I said, you know me, I'll try almost anything. Well, I didn't know what she had in mind. Do you ever watch Shark Week on TV?
Yep.
We flew to where they filmed Shark Week, and I did a shark cage dive.
Yeah,
I was in the cage, and you can see pictures of it on my Pinterest page. I think you can see them on my website as well, of me in the cage and a picture of a shark. I had an underwater camera and got some great pictures. I'm a firm believer, and this is going to sound crazy, but I'd rather die having fun than sitting home worrying about it. I just can't worry about it. This month, I will be 70 years old. And a few weeks ago, I did a zip line off 350 feet high off the top of a hotel building, a mile down. And if I don't like it, I'll never do it again. So it's not a big deal, but I've got to say, at least I'll try it. And my one of my big goals also was I always wanted to see the Northern Lights. So for this special birthday, we just signed up for a trip. I'm going to Iceland the end of March to see the Northern Lights. And the beginning of March, I'll be at the UN for 2 weeks with 10,000 women from all over the world. So how can you beat that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a wonderful life.
Amazing. So, Nancy, it sounds like your guiding principle to all of our Mindalia fans out there is live your life. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to take calculated risk. And the reason why I say calculated risk, when I was laying down with the cheetah, how was that calculated? There was a guy standing next to me with a rifle over his shoulder.
Yeah.
And if anything happened, he would have shot the cheetah if he had to. When my daughter laid down with the cheetah, I have a picture of him licking her arm. And what an experience for a mother and daughter to share. Calculated risk in the shark cage. They don't completely submerge you. There's about 6 inches of air above the top of the tank. And anytime you have a problem, they just pull you up. Or if you freak out, you just let yourself go and you'll float to the top and you can breathe. So calculated risk is important. I'm not saying you ever have to do the crazy stuff I do, but you need to find what excites you so that at the end of your life, when you look back, you can feel great about the life you had.
Yeah. And I think you've lived a pretty cool 70 years. Nancy, so do you have any big goals for like year 75 or year 80 or anything like that?
I think I haven't quite thought about that yet. I think I'll get through this one first. And within the next, my life has changed a lot in the last 6 months. So I'm working now on what my goals are for the next 5 to 10 years. And I'll have that figured out by the end of March.
And that's important, like a little introspection, a little quiet time. That's important for all people to do. So I know we're going to be wrapping up the show pretty soon. It's going to be coming back on the closes out real soon. But is there anything that I didn't get around to asking you, Nancy, that you want to share with our guest?
One thing that I've always found is real important in life and especially in business is the risk factor. And the reason I say that, here's a perfect example. There was one time when I was running my business when all of my staff would buck me anytime I wanted to change technology. I mean, one time I just wanted to have a menu and have them take clients' coats and bring them coffee. They gave me such a hard time that I knew I would take a six-figure pay cut that year, but I fired them all at the same time. And the reason I took a six-figure pay cut is I now had to do all of their work, plus interview for new staff, plus hire, train new staff, and see my clients. And that would mean I'd see a lot less clients. After about a year and a half, I had the right staff in place. The business took off. And I would say in a year and a half, not only had I made back the 100,000 I lost, but I was making a lot more money. So you have to always not be happy with where you're at, be happy with where you're at, but never be comfortable that that's where you're going to stay. You have to seek out. I mean, if you think about what technology was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and how it's changed, now think about how it's going to be 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. There's going to be things we've never even seen or heard of before. And you've got to be ready to jump on that stuff. And not only jump on it, but you have to seek it out as a business owner and as an individual. With the seniors that I coach when I speak, I talk to them about apps they can get on their phone. I do a session and show them how to get the apps on their phone that can make their life so much easier, especially if they're seniors that live alone and want to know how to have people contact them and how to do different things. It's just amazing if you take the time and the energy, don't stay in the present, and always look to grow and take on additional challenge.
I love that advice, Nancy, that quiet whisper of discontent to seek out future opportunities. Love that.
Way to put it.
Yeah, I love it. So Mirna should be coming back on any minute to close this out. And definitely going to get, how people can find you, get a hold of you, all that stuff. Let's see if Mirna's still around. Mirna, you still with us? You closing us out, Mirna? Cool. Hey, good to see you again, Mirna.
Well, thank you guys for allowing the Mindalia TV cameras being a channel for your ideas. Before we finish, of course, we want to ask Nancy Butler, where can our audience find you, Nancy?
My website is www.aboveallelse.org. My telephone number is 860-444-0535.
How about Mr. Dan Blanchard? Where can our audience find you?
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you, Mirna. So they can definitely check me out at danblanchard.net, granddaddy6.com, all the social media channels, the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the Instagram, you name it, the Pinterest, everywhere. And of course, Mindalia TV. Woo, woo, woo.
Thank you. Once again, we want to thank you for allowing the Mindalia TV cameras being a channel for your ideas. Before we leave, of course, we just want to remind everyone seeing that Mindalia.com is an international nonprofit organization and that you can collaborate with us, just liking this video, sharing it with someone that you know that can benefit of the content that we have been talking about today. You can like and you can subscribe. Having said that, we have nothing else to say but thank you again, and until the next Mindalia live streaming. Bye-bye.
Bye.